Story 1. Dementia, Parkinson's disease, and other neurodegenerative conditions can persist for years with a continued decline. Story 2. Death is not something I fear, but being kept alive just enough to survive on a ventilator is my worst nightmare. Story 3. The way in which I die. Death is inevitable whether it comes sooner or later, so there is no use fearing something you will have to face regardless of whether you want it or not. But dying peacefully and as painlessly as possible, and departing with dignity, are matters you should have a say in. No one should have to endure a slow, painful death. Story 4. I do not fear death at all. I probably fear everything else. Story 5. I never feel fulfilled anymore and keep persevering through what seems to be a never-ending life lesson. I'm exhausted. Story 6. The idea that God is not what I was raised to believe he should be troubles me. I am Muslim, and day after day I become more distressed when I see people suffering. How could an all-loving, all-powerful, and all-knowing being allow that to happen in the name of free will? Either I am unable to understand, or everything I have believed is fading and a much scarier reality is what I have been ignoring. Story 7. I have experienced prolonged, chronic pain as part of cancer treatment. I feel like I would rather be dead. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. If you are thinking about hurting yourself or are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. Dial 988 if you are in the United States, or contact your local crisis line. If you can, tell someone you trust and reach out to a health professional. Would you like me to help find crisis resources or a hotline in your area? Are you safe right now? Story 8. I fear being near wood chippers because I imagined I would die in one. If I stay away from them, I feel as if I can live forever. Story 9. Losing loved ones, not living up to my potential or my dreams, and a major health issue. Story 10. Vomiting and any physical condition associated with it, including pregnancy, gastroscopy, undergoing radiation therapy for cancer, anxiety treated with medication, lysergic acid diethylamide therapy, or ketamine therapy. Story 11. Losing eyesight, hearing, or both. Even worse would be sudden, inexplicable, unstoppable cognitive decline. Story 12. If I attempt suicide and fail, I could become paraplegic and be forced to live without ever speaking or moving, essentially locked-in syndrome. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Are you thinking about harming yourself right now? If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please contact local emergency services or a local crisis line. If you want to talk, I can listen and help find resources. Story 13. Being taken and thrown into a concentration camp is why I am always armed. At least I can die on my feet. Story 14. Don't be afraid of death, Winnie. Be afraid of the unlived life. Tuck everlasting. Story 15. Being one of those unfortunate people filmed in accident gore videos that others send to one another. Story 16. The Reaper. Death is a transition, the Reaper facilitates it. Story 17. Returning to the third dimension rather than moving to a higher dimension. Story 18. I do not fear death. It brings me peace because I know I am going to heaven and will be with God one day. You can have this peace too. Turn away from sinful desires and trust in Jesus alone. Accept him into your life. He died the death we deserve on the cross and rose from the grave 3 days later, defeating death. If you turn from your sins and trust him, you will spend eternity with him in paradise. I am not afraid because I know God has a plan for my life. Story 19. Suffering. When it's my time to go, make it quick. No need to drag it out. Story 20. I've been dead. That doesn't scare me, nor does it give me the dread that it will happen again. Public speaking, though. Story 21. Bees, yellow jackets, wasps, and hornets. I do not know why. Logically, I know they all serve an important role in our ecosystem, especially bees. My blood turns to ice, my heart jackhammers in my chest, and it is painful to breathe when I am near one. I have no control over that. Story 22. I am going to hell. After an eternity, it is only the beginning. Story 23. Amnesia and dementia are terrifying. The idea of being myself but no longer being me is a scary concept. I saw it happen to one of my grandparents. I never want to go through that. Story 24. A slow, dull, depressing alcoholic life. I've heard stories about women in San Francisco chained to beds, given enough substances to keep them dope sick and forced to be defiled. These were not consensual or paid activities. I fear that even more than death. Story 25. The physical pain and fear that can come before death, like when older men in the hospital call for their mothers all night long, are worse. Death itself is not too much of a problem. Story 26. Dementia, honestly. It used to be cancer when I was younger. Now I have seen many older relatives develop various forms of it. It is horrifying. Story 27. I fear dying from a slow, deteriorating condition. My father's mother died from Hodgkin's lymphoma, and my mother's mother is rapidly deteriorating from Alzheimer's disease. I prefer a quick death and fear this more. Story 28. Regret. The idea of looking back and realizing I never tried for what I truly wanted. Story 29. I like the quote from Hania Al-Jamal from Gaza Diaries. I am far more terrified of grief than I am of death. Story 30. At first my fear was losing my parents, especially my mother, who was the kindest and most supportive person I had the privilege of knowing. After they passed a few years ago, that fear turned into the fear of losing my mind. I have severe anxiety, and when I have a panic attack, I cannot regain control. That loss of control over my own mind is terrifying. Although I know it is only a panic attack, I fear I will not recover, that it will never end and I will feel like that forever. I also fear acting irrationally while in that state and harming myself or putting myself in danger to end the feeling. For example, getting hit by a car while trying to flee. It is hard to explain if you have not experienced being in the grip of something beyond your ability to rein in, but it is terrifying. Story 31. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Sounds like you are in a lot of pain. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number, for example 911 in the United States. If you are in the US or Canada, you can call or text 988 to reach crisis support. In the UK, you can call Samaritans at 116 123. In Australia, Lifeline is 13 11 14. If you are elsewhere, tell me your country and I will find local help. I can stay with you and listen or help you contact someone who can support you right now. Story 32. I am not doing enough for those I love and for everyone else. I just hope the world is a little better after I am done. Story 33. I would like my suffering to be quick, painless, and without my realizing it. I am sorry you are feeling this way. If you are in immediate danger or thinking about harming yourself, please contact your local emergency services right now. If you can, reach out to someone you trust or a mental health professional for support. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please contact your local emergency number or local crisis resources. I can help find resources in your area or connect you with support if you want. Story 34. A cage. To stay behind bars until use and old age accept them and all chance of valor has gone beyond recall or desire. Story 35. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or any illness that causes me to lose my independence and become homeless. Story 36. If my partner died before me, I don't think I could go on alone. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you thinking about harming yourself or planning to? If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number now. If you can, contact someone you trust or a local crisis line for support. You do not have to go through this alone. Story 37. Eternity after death. I'm done after one life. No need to level up. Story 38. Being old and stiff and having that scared, shocked look permanently on my face. The kind of old that looks physically uncomfortable. No, just kill me. If you are thinking about harming yourself, please contact local emergency services or a crisis line right now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for immediate help. Story 39. Some theists stage a rug pull because humans are poor communicators, that is, the telephone game and misinformation used as crowd control. Like any theology that indiscriminately gathers the dead, it effectively tells you fuck you forever in whatever place. Return me to a source, instead of forcing me to wander a plane of souls as myself forever. The idea that this would happen because it is just the way things are, or because this fucked up world made it nearly impossible to avoid wearing multiple kinds of cloth or to end a single life is wild. Bug Lives Matter. Story 40. That movie where they left the divers using self-contained underwater breathing apparatus in the middle of the ocean. Story 41. Serving on a ship of the damned and turning into a fish person. Story 42. To fall ill in a way that you become trapped in your body is worse than death. Story 43. I am probably not achieving anything meaningful in life. Death does not scare me as much as living without purpose. Story 44. Pain and suffering. This is what we are all truly afraid of, not death itself. Story 45. I am worried about dementia and about saying out loud everything I have been thinking. Story 46. Pain. My browsing history, my Discord chat, and my gallery screenshots are full of blackmail material. I wish my phone would explode when I die so my secret stays with me. I am really sorry you are feeling this way. If you are thinking about hurting yourself or are in immediate danger, please contact local emergency services right now. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Please consider reaching out to someone you trust or a mental health professional. If you would like, I can help you find local resources or talk through what is happening. If you are a minor, please tell a parent, guardian, or another trusted adult. Story 47. Polar bears. I live near them. They will not kill you. They will eat you. Being held down by a 1,100-pound apex carnivore that has no qualms about making you scream in agonizing terror and pain is terrifying. You would probably pass out quickly and then die from blood loss. Seeing a full-grown polar bear walk by or chase you would likely be the worst thing you could ever experience. Story 48. I have quadriplegia. I have been hospitalized in the intensive care unit multiple times, and on one occasion I had to be resuscitated. It was not fun, but my reaction was the obvious consequence of a large dose of adrenaline being injected into my central line, plus the sensation you get when you narrowly avoid a serious collision while driving. I also broke my back, and a few months later injured it again. They picked up the misaligned healed fracture on an X-ray, where it was indistinguishable from a horrible new fracture. I was terrified. I did not know how I could mentally survive the consequences of that fracture. I knew it would be painful and that I would be trapped in the abusive place I was in at the time. It was horrific and made me afraid of my osteoporosis in a way I had never been afraid of a health problem. Story 49. Death is nothing. A medically compromised life is a fucking nightmare. Ever woken up on life support? Waking up to a machine breathing for you and tubes coming out of various parts of your body can be terrifying. When you slowly regain consciousness, your body wants to work on its own, so you immediately go into intense panic as fight or flight kicks in. You feel like you are being gagged and suffocated. You are not actually being gagged. It is your body working against the unnatural mechanism inflating your lungs. As you try to thrash around to save yourself in a haze of terror, with your body racked with pain from whatever put you there, a team of caring nurses and doctors runs in to control the situation so you do not yank tubes and needles out. Your body and mind scream that they are trying to kill you. If you did not wake up already restrained, you end up in restraints as the panic intensifies. Once you realize everyone around you is not your enemy and that they are only trying to help you relax and control your panic, your mind and body finally give up and you find a sliver of peace. It is uncomfortable, but at least not as terrifying. You are left feeling helpless as your body aches. Your mind goes south quickly. For me, an immediate wall of depression set in because I would rather have been dead than tortured by machines. It is not like in the movies where you automatically wake up and all the machines are removed. No, it is a torturing process that can take days, where you are locked in a body too sick to work on its own, though it is fighting against the machines to do just that. Getting off the ventilator was pure joy. When the tubes were out of my lungs and past my lips, the first word out of my mouth was a gravelly fuck. In closing, From my experience, death is nothing and we have nothing to fear, but I fear returning to a conscious mind locked in a sick body controlled by machines. It is fucking torture and made me a strong proponent of having legal paperwork that establishes what can and cannot be done for me when I am medically incapacitated. Story 50. Being unable to take care of myself and having to rely on others to get things done. Story 51. I was completely immobile, unable to communicate, but fully aware of everything going on around me for many years. Story 52. Death has become a bit obsessed and is stalking me like a creep. Story 53. Either divorce, which I cannot imagine because it would leave me without my partner, or an impactful disease like Parkinson's disease or cancer. These are things that suddenly take over and dictate the rest of your life. Story 54. What most women fear while trying to get home after dark. Story 55. Psychosis. I have experienced it once. I would rather die than go through it again. I am medicated now and have a good support system. All is good. Story 56. Everyone fears pain more than death. Life and death are opposite sides of a doorway, and pain is the threshold. If you are in enough pain, you will gladly walk all the way through to death just to escape it. Story 57. The final days before. Having to make mundane decisions. Sign papers, read paperwork, waste my last moments. Watching as hard choices must be made, like selling heirlooms or antiques to pay bills. Destitute, alone, confused and in pain. I wish something would end this. If you are thinking about harming yourself or are in immediate danger, please contact emergency services or a crisis line now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988. If you are elsewhere, contact your local emergency number or a local crisis hotline. You are not alone. I can help find resources or support if you want. Story 58. I fear being kidnapped, harassed, sexually assaulted, or even raped when I go outside. I legitimately started feeling anxious and on edge this morning when my mother left me outside for a few seconds to go to the bakery. Sadly, this happens far too often, and I am physically small and not strong. Story 59. Failure as a daughter, friend, sister, student, and person. Story 60. Not knowing what is on the other side. I mean nothing according to science, but what nothing feels like we will never know. Story 61. Being incapacitated, unable to react or speak but still aware of everything, is my greatest fear. I do not fear death, but I do fear an almost death situation. Story 62. Aside from losing my family, being trapped terrifies me. I have claustrophobia, and the idea of being trapped under rubble or in a cave is so terrifying that I would probably bite my wrist and bleed to death. Story 63. The day my sight is completely gone. I have a degenerative eye disease and was diagnosed at age 8. I was told I would be blind by age 16. I made it to age 44 and am still able to work to provide for my family. But I know one day it will go dark. Life is hard, and I often struggle with feeling like a burden and being alone in the dark. More than anything, I fear that day. Story 64. Whatever comes after will last forever, and we have no idea what it is or if there is anything at all. Story 65. Watching the people I love suffer and not being able to help. Story 66. Dementia and Alzheimer's disease. In my youth, I could never understand what would make a 70-year-old man just walk off the front porch and eat a 45 for breakfast. Now I do. Story 67. Being run over by a train, losing my limbs, but surviving. Story 68. Going blind or losing the use of my legs. As much as we pretend to make the world accessible, getting around in a wheelchair is very difficult because the environment is not set up for it. Story 69. I am spending the final years of my life feeling as empty and alone as I have felt for the first 60 years. I will die without ever having really lived and will have contributed so little to this world that my death will go completely unnoticed. Out of sight, out of existence. Story 70. Dying last. I don't want to be alone. Being surrounded by death is a worse fear than being the first to go. Story 71. Living my life and passing away without ever knowing what it feels like to be loved by a woman. I know what love is and how it makes a woman feel, but I have never had that love reciprocated. It is a hard reality to face when you have so much love in your heart to give. Story 72. Not dying, being attached to tubes and machines, trapped in my own mind because someone ignored my do not resuscitate order. Story 73. I am living with anxiety right now. I have started medication, and the first few weeks are rough. Story 74. Dementia or paralysis. I hike, climb, and ski in the Canadian Rockies. I live in a small apartment but have the largest, wildest backyard imaginable. My plan if I develop dementia or become paralyzed. Bears are actually kind of cute. I have spotted them frolicking in creeks and rivers occasionally, and while they are skittish, they are not necessarily afraid of humans. If I end up like that, I'm gonna go play with the forest puppies. Story 75. I don't fear death. Matthew 10 verse 28 King James Version. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Story 76. I fear regret more than death. I fear reaching the end and realizing I did not really live, that I played it too safe, did not say how I felt, or let fear stop me from doing things that mattered. Story 77. Almost everything. Death is not to be feared. It is to be embraced at the proper time. There is no harm in trying to increase your health and longevity on this planet, although ultimately both are futile. Richard Simmons died at 76, while Winston Churchill died at 90. I do not think anyone can argue the discrepancy between their lifestyles. Story 78. Being laid off and the uncertain time it will take to find work again. Possibly having to accept a worse job just to avoid losing my house. Story 79. Getting to the point of my death and realizing that my life wasn't worth living. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. If you are in immediate danger, please call emergency services or go to your nearest emergency room now. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are outside the United States, please contact your local emergency number or a local crisis line. If you can, consider reaching out to someone you trust or a mental health professional. If you want, I can help find resources or stay and talk. Are you safe right now? Story 80. Seizures and coma are serious. I am epileptic, so I definitely do not want to go into a coma. Story 81. Everything, because I don't fear death. I just don't want to trigger death by my own will. Story 82. Alzheimer's disease, disability, and being a burden will not happen if I have anything to say about it. On the other hand, I am at the point where, if I were bleeding out in a car accident, I would likely think, well, whatever. Story 83. Surviving a nuclear holocaust and witnessing the unspeakable horrors that would follow for a few days before I die in an undoubtedly nasty way. Story 84. Juventus won the Champions League. At least I am certain that death will come. Story 85. When my mom or any family member says we need to talk, it makes me laugh. Story 86. Life. Death is so final. It is going to happen at some point, and I cannot control that. That is the funny thing about life. No one gets out alive. Story 87. Secure, contain, protect 3001. It is irrational but valid. Story 88. Remember what it was like before you were born? Death is exactly like that. I do not know. Surviving a nuclear exchange means watching anyone you ever cared about slowly starve and freeze in a nuclear winter, while the ones who caused it sit comfortably in their well-stocked bunkers. Story 89. I fear an unlived and unfulfilled life more than I fear death. I would sooner be put to sleep than be forced into a life of isolation and meaninglessness. Story 90. I have a disease. I do not want to find out what it would be like to have a kidney transplant, undergo surgery, receive dialysis, or suffer a slow, painful death. Story 91. With super AI killing everyone in the next 5 to 10 years, I have a new fear that it will torture us before killing us. I think it will probably kill us like ants without hate. Story 92. One of my children or sisters getting sick or losing another loved one. Story 93. Having an incurable illness that causes unbearable pain you cannot relieve is terrifying. I read about cluster headaches, where it can feel like your head is exploding and the pain can last for months. I do not know if I could live a day with that. Story 94. A cage. To stay behind bars until use and old age accept them and all chance of doing great deeds has gone beyond recall or desire. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.